I wasn't going to write a script for this video because I wanted it to be raw and real, but as I was just talking about things, I realized that I was all over the place and crying. So I've written the basics and I'll go into detail as I get into things. Trigger warning, this conversation contains talk of surgery and death. A few years ago, I made an animatic about the story because I found a song that perfectly matched the feelings I had around this event. I felt compelled to make something to try to capture the emotions that I felt. I encourage you to watch it, and I'll put a link to it in the description. I came out as trans in 2016, and binding was the bane of my existence at the time. I worked on a food truck, so between the heat, the awkwardness to bind what I was working with, and the dysphoria of looking in the mirror and feeling like it was a losing battle was a lot. I will add a side note, if you bind, please be safe. My ribs are permanently disfigured from binding, so be careful and do it the right way. I started testosterone at the beginning of 2017. I was so excited and it felt so amazing to finally be on the road to looking like how I felt. But the binding. And then there was going home in the evening and taking the binder off. Before I came out, and when I was trying to be as femme as possible because of denial, taking off the bra at the end of the day was amazing. The highlight of my day. But taking off the binder, the pain I felt from wearing it was easier to deal with than the psychological pain I felt from living every day as a guy and then coming home and having to deal with my body how it was. I liked the relief of not wearing a binder, but I hated everything else about it. So my spouse and I figured out a way to be able to get me top surgery. I found a surgeon in Michigan who only charged $5,000. He had great results, good reviews, and he seemed like a really nice guy. So I booked the appointment. Autumn 2018. I was nervous, but I was excited. Every day I would look at pictures of post-op trans guys and imagine what it would be like. This was around the time that I was going through a spiritual shift, and I kind of liked the witchcraft and pagan things. I started playing around with tarot cards, and I don't know how I feel about them now, but I just know that whenever I use them, the things that they say seem correct. Anyway, I decided to ask my deck of cards how my surgery was going to go. They told me the surgery itself was going to go great, but the healing process was going to be difficult. That seemed weird, since I've never had trouble healing from anything. I'd had 2 surgeries before that, and both had went well, and I healed faster than I thought I would. So, with that in the back of my mind, we left for Michigan. A 4-hour drive wasn't awful. My parents insisted on going, since I would need to stay in a hotel for my post-op checkup with the doctor a week later. And of course they were just worried about me having a surgery. The drive was nice. I drove. My dad sat in the passenger seat and my mom insisted on sitting in the back like she was being chauffeured somewhere. We got to the hotel late, but I didn't care. My parents snored like bears, but I didn't care. I basically got no sleep that night, but I didn't care. On the drive to the doctor's office, my dad pointed out a place that he wanted to get burgers. He was on the search for the best burger he had ever eaten. I walked into the office, checked in. There was no wait, so I pretty much went straight to the back. I was shuffled around a little. My chest was marked up, and before I knew it, I was on the operating table, unconscious. I didn't have any time to overthink. I don't remember much after waking up, just barfing from the anesthesia and feeling like my torso was falling off. But the meds were good, and I was up and wandering around the hotel room the next day. It was cold, and I'd only packed shorts, so we went to Walmart for some pants. I didn't care that I had just had surgery. I wasn't in much pain, and I just wanted an excuse to wear a button-up shirt, now that my chest wasn't going to stretch out the buttons. What were the tarot cards even talking about? I didn't need help with anything. I was able to lift my arms just enough to do everything for myself. I was barely in any pain, and I wouldn't even have needed my parents to be there. But they were there, so we hung out, had some ice cream, did some crafts, and I forgot all about the tarot cards. Finally, a week later, it was the day of my chest reveal. We could finally get on the road, and I could see my daughter and heal in the comfort of my own home. My mom and I talked briefly about how my dad had been sleeping a lot more since we'd been there, but we figured he was just tired from traveling. I got up and helped pack as much as I was allowed. I wasn't supposed to lift much. My parents went to look for a luggage cart and took a few bags to the truck, while I finished brushing my teeth and getting ready. I had enough time to finish my bathroom routine, change my clothes, pack everything else, and then go look in the mirror one more time. I was getting excited for my surgical binder to finally come off so I could see my new chest. As I walked out of the bathroom, I realized my parents had been gone way longer than they should have been, and at that moment I turned my head toward the window, and my stomach dropped. I saw an ambulance drive by, and I thought, surely that can't be for us. Everything raced through my mind as I made my way to the window to look into the parking lot. Did my mom fall and break her leg? Did my dad pass out from low blood sugar? But I didn't even make it to the window before the hotel room phone rang. The person on the other end sounded frantic and said I needed to go outside right away. Then someone knocked on the door. As excited and energized as I was before, I suddenly just felt like I was spiraling. I opened the door, and the person ushered me down the hallway and down the stairs. When I opened the door, I saw an ambulance and a few police cars, and my mom standing talking to an EMT. But I didn't see my dad. I ran over, ignoring whatever pain was coursing through my chest, and hugged my mom. She wasn't really speaking in complete sentences. My dad had walked across the parking lot to get a shopping cart to use as a luggage cart. She said he sat down, and she was going to walk over to bring the truck over to pick him up, to drive him to the back door of the hotel, and then he just passed out. She had been doing CPR on him almost the entire time that I had been naively packing in the hotel room. The guilt immediately hit me, but I didn't really have time to dwell on that. We were on the way to the hospital, and that wasn't the medical building that I thought I was going to find myself in that morning. They took my dad to the ICU, and they took me and my mom to a family conference room. We called my brothers, and they immediately left to meet us in Michigan. The whole time I was waiting, small, disconnected thoughts were flowing through my mind. The last movie I watched with my dad was Roadhouse. Was his head still covered in the glitter that I sprinkled all over it the night before? I drove to Michigan with two parents. I sat in the waiting room. I'm gonna cry. I sat in the waiting room with my mom, with my head on her shoulder, just drifting in and out of sleep. I'd barely slept the night before, for nerves and my parents snoring. Cardiac arrest. My dad had been in bad shape for a pretty long time, but this was unexpected. They told us about this procedure they could do to try to save his brain, since he'd been so long without enough oxygen. I guess bring his body temperature down so that his brain has a chance to heal or something. My brothers got there, along with my nephew. They gave us our own waiting room. I guess that's how you know it's bad. My brother took me back to the hotel to rest a little bit, since I was in pain from sitting up for so long. I'd mostly forgotten about my chest until I got back to the hotel. I called my doctor and told him what was going on, and he said to take as long as I needed, and the hotel let us book a few more days for free because of circumstances. When I was alone in the hotel, I didn't break down like I thought I would. I cleaned. I had a pounding headache while I washed my dad's uneaten ice cream down the sink. I ignored the fire in my stitches as I dragged the two suitcases back up from the truck. I only got an hour of sleep before I wanted to go back to the hospital. They came and went with news for 2 days. Bad kidneys, heart issues, seizures. In the middle of it, my brother took me to my doctor's office for my chest reveal. I was healing just fine on the outside. Friday night, I talked with my brother alone, and we realized this wasn't going to end unless we ended it ourselves. My dad wasn't there anymore. My mom's reaction was something out of a movie. I'd never seen someone act like that in real life before. Hysterical, telling us that she wanted to drive him home with his body propped up in the passenger seat, or that she wanted them to take his arm off so she could take that home with us. In the end, she settled on wanting to take his hospital gown home, but she didn't get that. The next day we made a pit stop at Walmart before we went to the hospital. We all needed some kind of energy drink and a real meal. I think my mom was stalling because she knew what was going to happen that day. When we got there, a kidney doctor came in trying to tell us the great news about how good my dad's kidneys were suddenly doing. My brother and I just stared daggers at him until he read the room and left. His kidneys could be at 100%. His kidneys weren't the problem. Another doctor came in a bit later, and we all kind of separately told him what needed to be done. And a few hours later, we let my dad go. As we were all standing around his bed, crying, the tarot cards creeped back into my mind. I realized the cards might not have been talking about my chest healing, but maybe what was inside my chest. When we left the hospital that night, none of us had eaten. I didn't want to eat. My mom was somewhere lost in her head, and she demanded 2 fast food combo meals, one for her and one for my dad. I remember looking at my brother, completely unable to see the best choice in this situation. He said to just get them, so I did. After my mom seemed to come back to herself, we all sat in the hotel room talking about my dad, his childhood, how my parents met, our favorite memories about him. The next day, I drove home with one parent. It's been 8 years. Still bawling like a baby for this. Over the course of the next 3 months, I went through many stages of grief, and I settled on a mixture of anger and guilt. Why did this have to happen during what was supposed to be an amazing experience for me? What am I supposed to do with all these negative feelings? Did the 4-hour drive cause a blood clot that went to my dad's heart? Was this my fault? A few months before all of this happened, my taste in music was changing. I started listening to more indie stuff, softer music, things that were comforting and felt safe. That entire playlist is tainted now, and I named it Autumn in Michigan. When I hear other trans people talking about their top surgery, I always get a twinge of jealousy. I think this is what caused me to distance myself from the trans community for so long. Until recently, I wanted to remain stealth and never tell anybody I was trans again. 2 years after my dad passed away, I had to make a really hard personal decision that would change my life dramatically. I was struggling with the consequences of that decision, and people around me were calling me a bad person. I was convinced if my dad was still here, he would have hated me for what I had to do. One day I was at my lowest, and my mom called me, and she was already crying. She told me she had a dream about my dad. In the dream, he told her, "Tell Peanut not to worry. Everything is gonna be okay." It took every part of me not to break down right then. My dad called me Peanut. I told my mom I had no idea what that dream could have meant, and when we hung up, I proceeded to cry hysterically. Things have calmed down from all of that now, and I will choose to accept that he came back to tell my mom that, so I would know he supported me with where things had taken me in my life. Tell me your stories. Trans surgery stories, dead relatives in your dreams stories, happy stories. I'll see you next week.